What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, guys. I had this video recommended to me. We in Sweden, of course. We got the Stockholm, Sweden experience. Did forget the channel, experiencing the city channel right here. So, yeah, I seen it. I was like, man, I haven't did nothing really in Sweden, like, you know, in the towns and different things like that, probably since Visby, Gotland, and all those things like that. But we here finna check this out, see what it's about. Y'all follow your boy on Instagram, Twitter. I do got the Patreon if you would like to support your boy even further. Or, you know, I got movie TV show reaction that usually get blocked and stuff on YouTube, so y'all can check that out as well. But we're gonna check out the Stockholm, Sweden experience. Let's see. Oh, I might have to turn it up a little bit more.
Welcome back to Experiencing the City. I'm Michael Matheny, and today we're traveling experientially to Stockholm, Sweden. Before visiting Stockholm for the first time, I had a pretty vague idea of what Sweden's overall ambience and atmosphere would consist of. Vikings, dance music, and the Scandinavian accent were all I really knew, or at least presumed I knew, about this Nordic country. And as with most journeys in life, my lack of expectation resulted in my Swedish experience being quite a pleasant surprise. During my Swedish adventure, I compiled my observations via all of my senses, including the way the city looks, feels, smells, sounds, and tastes. My goal in this video is to take these observations, both big and small, and create an immersive experience in your mind of what it's like to physically experience this lush, fresh, and rather magical part of the world. So let's get started. There are very few high-rise buildings in Stockholm, but the silhouette of the city is still quite distinctive. There are dozens of tall, pointed church steeples and spires instead, piercing the sky on random places. There's no direction you can turn without a towering spire in sight. A big element to Stockholm's visual persona is, of course, its waterways. Stockholm is spread across a series of 14 islands and is therefore covered in bridges, waterfront marinas, waterfront parks, and maritime reference points. Part of the public transit network in the city is actually a series of water ferries that cruise through the expansive and winding natural canals. At the street level, the first thing you should do when mentally placing yourself—
Dang, okay, this is pretty cool. I think I did a couple of walkthroughs walking in Sweden. I want to say I've seen this part before.
And winding natural canals. At the street level, the first thing you should do when mentally placing yourself in Stockholm is to imagine yourself somewhere very clean. Not just in the sense that there isn't trash in the streets, but also just the fact that the roads feel freshly paved, the buildings cleanly painted, the cobbled streets without missing stones or with weeds growing in the cracks, and little to no graffiti on the walls. Many of the areas in the city look as if they could exist in a Disney World park. One such area is the Gamla Stan, or Stockholm's Old Town.
Oh yeah.
Because of how immaculately polished it feels, with its shimmering cobbled stones, smoothly painted facades, and picture-perfect angles at every turn, Stockholm's Old Town is almost the quintessential medieval European street. The narrow, cobbled streets between the towering, creamy yellow buildings are wide enough for pedestrians, but not quite wide enough for dining terraces, and certainly not for cars. Swedish flags of blue and yellow fill the storefronts and hang above door frames, and every other shop is filled with Swedish souvenirs of Viking hats, troll figurines, rotating candle holders, and the do-it-yourself ingredients for afternoon Fika. I'll touch more on that in a bit. Traditional cafes and pubs line the street.
I got a DIY Fika thing? That's interesting. It's like, you know, you don't have to go nowhere. Make it yourself.
But a mixture of modern businesses, including 7-Elevens and TGI Fridays, reminds you of exactly what century you're in. In Gamla Stan, and
they got a TGI Fridays?
TGI Fridays reminds you of exactly what century you're in.
Did not know
in
that.
In Gamla Stan, and throughout the greater city, the color palette along the unbreaking rows of 5 to 6 story buildings reminded me a bit of Madrid, Spain, with painted facades of creamy yellow, rustic reds and browns, and slightly off whites.
I can see that, yeah, with the colors.
The facades are very clean. It seems as if most of the buildings were once brick, but are now covered in the smooth type of stucco. The city feels fairly uniform outside of the modern box buildings and medieval churches. Buildings aren't nearly as flamboyant as in Paris, Madrid, Brussels, or Vienna. The architecture is still beautiful, but it's more subtle and less imperial. It's also starkly different than places in southern and central Europe. There's a lot of metal and shingled roofs rather than terracotta. There aren't steeped rooflines signifying power and holiness like in the Dutch region, and there are many more trees integrated into the cityscape. Throughout the large, dense blocks are indoor shopping centers, sometimes quite large, others with just a few shops, called gallerians. The underground metro system in Stockholm is called tunnelbana. And I'm not exaggerating when I say
I didn't even know that was the name of it, but this is definitely something I want to see right here.
It's the best metro system I've ever seen from an aesthetic standpoint. The thing can be incredibly complex if you aren't familiar with Stockholm or don't speak Swedish. Not only are the stations and tunnels immaculately clean, but they're also strikingly beautiful, as the stations themselves double as public art galleries, with murals painted along the exposed stone, blasted and carved directly into the hillsides. An area that really captures the visually striking identity of Viking-era Sweden, even if it isn't really a Viking-era relic itself, is the Vasa Museum. And a building that in and of itself is meant to emit qualities of the ship.
Have I seen this? I don't know if I've seen this or if I've seen somebody that was here.
Vasa Museum is home to the world's most well-preserved 17th century warship. The wooden Vasa is extremely huge, towering over 170 feet tall and over 225 feet long. It's exactly what you might perceive a ship from the Pirates of the Caribbean to look.
I forgot it was a guy. I think he went here and he was like walking and showing the ship and stuff. That one's cool. That one's very colorful and detailed right there.
Like up close. The ship itself sunk to the bottom of Stockholm's waterways upon its very first voyage in the 1600s, and due to the brackish and cool Scandinavian waters, was incredibly well preserved until its raising in the 20th century.
Wow.
Today, you can only view the vessel from the outside, but it's incredibly awe-inspiring and paints an amazing picture of Sweden's historic naval power. Skansen is Stockholm's open-air museum and is apparently the largest and oldest of its kind in the world.
Wow.
Perched atop a large hillside plateau, this expansive park includes recreations of Swedish cultural staples from throughout the nation's history, a Scandinavian zoo, cafes, gardens, a science center, and an aquarium. The park itself was an incredible adventure, but getting to it was half the fun. I didn't actually plan on visiting Skansen, but rather stumbled upon it in a secondary entrance while a bit lost in what felt like Narnia. In a large park surrounding the hilltop near the Vasa Museum, it's hard to remember that you are not, in fact, living in a storybook reality. Large, moss-covered boulders burrowed into the mountainous green hillsides, wildflowers and plants, mushrooms, and the sounds of chirping birds all come together to create an ambience of enchantment. You almost wouldn't be surprised to see the trolls and gnomes from the Gamlastan tourist shops nestled among the trees, living in a home made from an oversized mushroom. There's very little automotive sound in the city, and this is strategic. In its green and sustainable efforts,
drums, riding a horse?
Stockholm
I ain't never seen that.
Europe's leading green capital. The city has significantly reduced individual automobile ownership with car shares, invested in high-quality public transportation, created bike paths, allowed development without parking requirements, and encouraged high walkability. What you hear instead is the soft rushing of the waterways, pedestrians walking, chatting, and laughing, and occasional street music. The sound of sirens echoing through the urban canyons is quite rare here, a stark difference from most large cities. In the shops, restaurants, cars driving by, and speakers, it's clear that EDM, or electronic dance music, is still the music of choice here. This doesn't surprise me at all, given that dance music legends such as Swedish House Mafia, Avicii, and Iconopop all called Stockholm home. That's fun to say. Once you make it outside the picturesque and almost Epcot-like old...
I do like the Swedish music scene. Like I think last year was the first time I heard of ABBA. Who else? Zara Larsson, Snow Aguilera, Enar. I know a couple that y'all been
town and the surrounding central area. Everything is written and spoken in Swedish. The seagulls are strangely loud here, and they're everywhere. There are also these birds that I can't quite identify, but they make this really harsh, low, rumbling sound that I've never heard before. Something that differed in Stockholm from cities and rural towns that I've visited in the past is that it doesn't really seem to have a distinctive smell. The best way I can describe the air in Stockholm is fresh, floral, and green. Of course, wafts of fishy water and damp stone, wild greenery, and aster flowers would make up the keynotes in a Stockholm-scented candle, were I to create one. If you're familiar with where Stockholm is on a map, then this won't surprise you very much, but even in late May and early June, it can be a bit chilly and misty here.
So it looked like
there were days during my visit that didn't make it out of the 50s in Fahrenheit. However, when the air warms up, it's absolutely splendid, and as with the low humidity and the sea breeze, you never
like
feel
it's
more
raining
than
right
pleasantly warm, even in the summer. Swedish food, like so much of Europe, is very much influenced by the sea. A typical Swedish stew that I really enjoyed was called fiskgryta. This dense stew includes salmon, potato, a pico-like mash, cabbage, and a delicious broth that is so good you'll use your brown bread slices to soak the rest of it up.
That's interesting.
A typical dish that can be eaten both as a snack or a meal itself is known as skagen, which is typically spread on toast. The skagen mix, which consists of mayonnaise, butter, chives, and shrimp, is spread over slices of rye bread. Perhaps Sweden's most classic dish is a warm plate of Swedish meatballs, roasted potatoes, and a spread of lingonberries.
I can eat this. The other stuff, I don't know. I'll definitely just try it, but this one, if it's not that good, I might have to eat this every day.
At Afer, in the Gamlastan, the medieval Swedish Viking experience comes to life. In addition to awesome medieval music, costumes, and fare, I ate reindeer for the first time, which was tender, juicy, and incredibly flavorful. And I drank several goblets of a crisp, light honey mead, which is exciting because in the past, I haven't even liked mead. It was just that good.
What is mead?
I can't talk about the tastes of Sweden, however, without talking about Fika. Fika isn't a food, but it's a daily event, a bit like afternoon tea or a coffee break. Swedish people take Fika very seriously. It usually occurs with coffee, which is exceptional in Sweden, I should add, and various types of desserts and pastries.
That looked good.
One Fika, in which I partook at a cafe in the Skansen open-air museum, featured a classic slice of Swedish chocolate cake, which, covered in whipped cream and raspberry jam, was more like a slice of dense chocolate fudge in its richness and consistency. If your mouth isn't watering right now, it should be. Understanding now the senses that you would experience in Stockholm, there's one final layer to add. A layer that isn't quite as tangible, but one that's incredibly important to understand.
That would be cool.
Sweden feels like a fairy tale forest. Stockholm feels like a fairy tale fishing city within that forest world. It feels magical, as if the forests and parks are inhabited by elves, gnomes, fairies, and trolls, as if the sky could well be filled with dragons. The streets, as you move away from the modern centers, take you into a fantasy world where medieval fishing merchants dwell among wizards. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Okay, this was good. We got to get the 5 senses of Sweden. That's new right there, letting us know what it smells like, what it tastes like, what it feels like. That's different, definitely gonna enjoy that. And I know the time is getting closer. I ain't gonna lie, I'll be a little nervous. I'll be nervous out here because I'm like, dang, the time is getting closer. And I'll finally get to experience my first time ever going to a different country. And it's going to be Sweden or Scandinavia in general. So I don't know. I seen it was a little cheaper to fly in Norway. Or fly to Norway. So that might be first. I don't know. But definitely going to experience Scandinavia. And I get nervous. You get nervous when it's close to time, but usually the nerves, they're good nerves, because you just don't know. I just don't know how it's going to be, first time is always the scariest time, you know what I'm saying? The nerves kick in and stuff, but this is cool. Maybe I'll have some 5 senses to say about Sweden as well, but I enjoy this. Appreciate y'all for sending me this recommendation. As always, y'all make sure y'all follow your boy on Instagram, Twitter. Got the Patreon if y'all want to check out some movie, TV show reactions that I post on there. They usually get blocked here on YouTube, but I still appreciate the support that I get here on YouTube, man. I appreciate it so much. But, hey, that's all I have. We got to experience some Sweden, experience the city with my guy Michael. So, appreciate that, Michael. Y'all make sure y'all give him a subscribe and like on the video as well. I put the link in the description. But y'all be blessed, be the best, and be you. I'm out.